Hello and welcome to the Brian Hornback 30. This is episode 59. And I've got somebody that's going to be on here with me for the next, Brian Hornback 30. It's less than 30 minutes. So I have on here on the phone right now, Miss Christine Cruz. Christine, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Well, let's get to the chase, and then I want to talk about a few other things since we got almost right at 30 minutes here. First of all, a lot of people have talked about Christine Cruz. A lot of people have written about Christine Cruz. But as far as I can tell, Christine Cruz has not really said anything publicly about this county commission at-large seat 10 race that you were considering. Now, what a lot of people need to understand is people sometimes will appoint a treasurer. Sometimes people will go get a petition. Sometimes people will turn that petition in. And the good news is that for folks to be on the ballot in 2022, the filing deadline is February the 17th for the May 3rd Republican or Democrat primary. But then a week later, you have a withdrawal deadline. So nobody's really a candidate till a week after February 17th. But I've read from some of these folks that like to write in these weekly columns that Christine Cruz is not running, Christine Cruz this, Christine Cruz that. They've had a little Christine Cruz beat-up party for the last few months. But best I can tell, Christine Cruz hasn't said anything to anybody. But I think we're going to end that right here, right now. So, Christine, are you going to be a candidate for county commission at-large seat 10 or 11 in 2022?
Well, Brian, I appreciate you calling me and asking for a statement. I'm going to have to say that after a year of going to meetings and meeting people and seeing, putting my feelers out there to see what the support was going to be like and discussing over the holidays with my family what the best course of action would be for me, I decided that it's not in the cards for me this time. So I will not be seeking that seat 10 at large. But it has been an amazing year, and just the people that I've met throughout the process has just been overwhelmingly positive and encouraging.
Well, that's fantastic. And I got to know you probably about a year, maybe a little more than a year ago. And the good news is that just because Christine Cruz is not going to be on the ballot, that means that some of these people that like to write about you can't necessarily write about you since you're not on the ballot. Or they can't write about you in a slanderous or libelous way.
But a normal citizen.
You're just an
everyday person with the same rights as any other average citizen.
That's right. But now let's just because you're not running doesn't mean that you're going to walk away and not be active in the process. Correct?
That's correct. No.
All right.
When we moved to Knoxville, I saw a need to get engaged personally in local politics because that's where the greatest difference can be made. And I encourage everyone else to do the same, to do what's right for your children, with the school board, with zoning, all of the things that affect us in our daily lives. I've never been more acutely aware of how important it is to physically, actively get engaged. And that means getting to know who the people are who represent you, write them, call them, get to know them on a first name basis, figure out, what the hot buttons are and, how to rally the troops, how to get more people involved. It's really, really important on a local level.
Well, and I think one of the greatest things about the last year is the fact that I had the opportunity to meet your husband, who is a medical professional in this community. I had an opportunity to meet your 3 adult sons, who all 3 are on their way to being very successful young men. And so you have a lot to be proud of. And let's just kind of talk about about the last year. We've seen a lot of things from our public servants, our public leaders. I mean, we saw, you were active in the in going to the county commission meetings and being active early in the pandemic, but I think what we had the opportunity to see there, no matter what side we were on, and that's the thing I like about you is they try to paint you as somebody that's on the extreme, but that's not what I saw in Christine Cruz. I saw somebody in Christine Cruz that while you and I might have a difference of opinion, we still had the opportunity to have a civil conversation. But I think what we saw through the process of the Board of Health and through all of that controversy was we were able to pick up the stone and we're able to see what happened to some of our leaders. And in particular, I'm talking about the meeting where the commission chairman at the time decided that he was going to adjourn the meeting, but none of his 10 colleagues joined him in that. And then his successful attempt to get the meeting taken off of the live feed, which I think most everyone knows that I kind of live and die on the live feed. So I was.
That made my blood run cold.
I mean,
the fact that he was able to do that. It's the rules for thee, but not for me.
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons why I chose that race to run. It was clearly obvious that we were nothing but a nuisance to him. And when I was out on the trail, and some people who were supporting my former opponent would claim that, oh, I'm not voting for her, she's an anti-vaxxer. Well, I could show them my vaccine card. They didn't know that. That was just all lies, or, people were making up lies and
right.
just deciding on their own without actually having a conversation. I may disagree with someone, but I certainly will give them a platform to discuss their opinion, and I respect someone's opinion as long as they're not threatening or hurting anyone else. I really feel like that's what this country was based on, and the whole idea of the First Amendment being under attack right now, with Whoopi Goldberg being suspended. I mean, it was awful, hateful, just incredibly stupid comments that she made. But you know what? In this country, the First Amendment affords you that right to be stupid.
Well,
and so the best way to counteract that is for someone to set the record straight and show how she was wrong.
Well, and when I started the blog, 2004, and then as it's progressed, and now that I'm doing podcasting and everything else, my whole thing is because I ran when I was 23 years old in Knox County against an incumbent who had been serving for 23 years at the time. Right. That was in 1990. And then again, I waited 10 years to ever run for office again. I've always been active in the political party, right. Republican Party, since I was 16 years old. But my main thing is that no matter who is on the ballot, no matter how much money someone has, they still have a right to be heard. They still have still have a right to be seen, and so that's one reason that I do what I do for the last number of years. And what's interesting is, your opponent, has been able to raise a lot of money. I mean he has a nonprofit that raises a lot of money, and so naturally he can raise a lot of money. But when we go back 4 years ago, Justin Biggs was considerably outspent and beat his opponent rather handily. Mayor Jacobs was outspent by two opponents, and one with less than.
What a great story that was!
Right,
yep.
less than 24 votes, yep. And Mayor Jacobs won that primary. So again, money doesn't. What we're starting to see is money doesn't always secure a win, and a lot of people, when you and I had this conversation the first time. I read an article in the paper because I left you alone until I actually read it in the paper, and then you and I had a phone conversation, and you were kind of we talked about the fact that you were kind of weighing your options. A lot of people told me after that, well, I hope she stays in, but even if she doesn't spend another dollar, I'm going to vote for her. And I said, well, that's just, I I will not tell someone that they shouldn't run or they should run. But I think what you've done in the last year is, and the news that I was able to break last week is that your opponent does have a Republican primary opponent in conservative attorney Steve Weiner.
Yes.
And when I broke that story, I think last Wednesday, and Steve called me on Thursday, in our conversation, he said to me, because Steve was one of those that he applied to be the citizen representative on the Board of Health, and actually was the second.
Yes.
He was the second person. I mean, he got 5 votes, and Miss Roma got 6 votes at the end. But he told me, he said, Brian, I would have thought about running because of the commission meeting that you and I have already just discussed. He said, but Christine Cruz was running. And so apparently Steve didn't, because of the holidays, Steve didn't realize until about 2 weeks ago that you weren't running. And so he's running in the Republican primary, which I think is good. And then at the same time, while I'm a Republican, I think that, general election opponents are good. And so, it looks like Matt Sears is doing what a political party chairman should do, and he's recruiting candidates. And at least he's recruiting credible candidates. The candidate they had against Mayor Jacobs 4 years ago was not very credible, but besides the point. So you were before you ran for commission, you were active in helping us. I say the Knox County Republican Party. You were helpful in helping us on the credentials committee. Kind of talk about that process, because that process is relatively new to the Republican Party. People signed up on a website to say they wanted to be a voting member of the caucus or the convention we had, and then you and I don't remember. I don't know how many people were on that committee.
There were a group of us that were invited to a breakfast last January, and I remember sitting with Elaine Davis and Gina Oster and a few other people involved in the local GOP. And, we were just sitting at a table, and the room was filled. Other former contact, Bob and Janice Cry were there. And then, there were a bunch of GOP people there, people that are involved in the local GOP. And we were asked to raise our hand if we wanted to be involved in the contest. Randy Pace was the chairman at the time, and he was looking for volunteers. And so I raised my hand along with a bunch of other people, and there were 5 of us chosen. I was one of them. James Corcoran, Mike Crane, and Wayne Sellers. We were all, and Roger Kane. And so we were the 5 people chosen. And then amongst the 5 of us, we were told that we all had to vote for a chairman in this group. The chairman wasn't handpicked. It was chosen amongst the 5 of us. Well, I didn't even really know what I was signing up for. I just knew I wanted to be involved, and I can learn on the fly and, follow directions. And so when I was told what the job entailed, and we all were, all of the men, the other people on the committee, they just said, well, why don't you be chairman? So, all of these accusations that Randy chose me to be the contest and credentials chair is just a flat out lie. So I'm like, wait a minute, I don't even know what this is.
Those are 4 smart men to say that we're going behind every successful man is a man who's pushed a woman out front, obviously. But just to talk about those 4 individuals, 2 of them are attorneys. Mike Crane and James Corcoran are attorneys. Yep. Roger Kane is an insurance guy by training and by profession, but he also served a few years in the General Assembly as a state representative from.
Yes, Roger's very engaged,
right.
And yeah.
And then Wayne.
Actually, he had to leave early that day because he had to attend a funeral. So he actually didn't even get a vote that day, but
right. But the other 4 did.
The rest of them, they
and
did, and that was enough to
And then
Wayne Sellers
is another guy. He's been active probably a little bit longer than I have, but I mean,
A few
I mean,
years,
I mean, when I got active in 1982, his father-in-law was on the county commission, former Commissioner Hassel Evans, Jeannie's dad, and so Wayne is a good one. Who, matter of fact, James Corcoran has had to resign because he's got a new job, so he's had to step down off of the Tennessee Republican State Executive Committee. And I've actually encouraged Wayne to consider running for that position this year, and I think Wayne Sellers will do a phenomenal job as the Republican State Executive Committee man for Richard Briggs's district. So Wayne was not committal to me 2 weeks ago when I suggested that to him, but he told me he would think about it. So Wayne's a good one. So that is funny that some of these would-be journalists, and I don't want anybody to think that Brian Hornback, the Brian Hornback 30 or BrianHornback.com is a journalist, because I'm not a journalist, but I perform a journalistic function. But it's funny how, we've been able now to clear that up, that, you weren't handpicked by the chairman, Randy Pace, to do that. And so, but I mean, so everybody that signed up online, y'all went through and checked their voting records and made sure that they had voted 3 out of the 4. And then if they hadn't, they were supposed to sign an oath that they would in the future, correct?
Right. There was an affidavit available for them to sign. And what that affidavit did was allowed them to vote in this election. And if it proved that these people were not authentic in the next election or the following election after that, then they would be banned from voting in future GOP elections.
Oh, I'm not, even as the newbie, I just got appointed to the Republican State Executive Committee August the 14th. Even as the newbie on the Republican State Executive Committee, I don't know that I followed that one. So basically, these folks have signed a legal binding document,
their allegiance to
right?
The GOP, and they're not going to vote for a Democrat,
right?
And if they do, and we can prove it, then they will no longer have the voting right.
Wow, that's strong. That's strong.
Yeah, people need to prove who they are. And let me make one point clear. When one of the criticisms that I got, which didn't really bother me because,
right.
But you're not from here. You really don't have the right to come here and tell us how to do things. Well, I'm a United States citizen. Right. And I've always been a conservative. It doesn't matter where I reside. I still have the same rights. And so if the GOP in Knox County was in great shape, I wouldn't have to get involved. Right. Right. So I'm doing my part as a new citizen to Knox County. I'm now 3-4 years in. I'm a almost 22-year resident of Tennessee. Right. So, I want Tennessee as a state to succeed. But when people try to intimidate new people to the state, people who have escaped New York or Chicago, Illinois or California, and they say, well, you really don't have a right. You just got here. Well, they sought Tennessee out because of our conservative values, and we don't want to let Tennessee get to the point where it's not salvageable. We want to push back now. And I think there's a real movement happening in Tennessee, and I think we are going to be watched on a nationwide level, and we need to push back, and we need to make these constitutional, attacks, that we just get called crazy for calling for due process and using the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as a guide. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's the way it should be, and we need to elect officials who agree with that. And we really shouldn't compromise in any way, because those are God-given rights. These are not rights given to us by government. So when someone tries to push back on someone who recently moved here, I take issue with that. I mean, there are some great conservatives who just relocated to this area of the country, like Mark Pulliam, who is a renowned, he's a writer for The Federalist. He's a great conservative. He's on the Mark Levin show. He's on Fox. He's on the Tennessee Star Report. I mean, he is a fighter for the Constitution and for, our rights as citizens, individual rights. And one of the great things that I have found through my process of meeting all of these people, I've met people like Dr. Alan Keyes and Mark Pulliam and, just all kinds of amazing conservatives. And it's just been the privilege of my life to, just have conversations with these people and just to learn as much as I can from them and their life experience. But it just made me more happy that I've gotten engaged in the process. And it makes me realize that more of us need to wake up and get involved as much as we can. Now, I don't know where the future will take me, but as far as me going to the county commission meetings and fighting against the Knox County Board of Health, that literally was just the gateway. That was just the thing that broke the dam.
Right.
That was just the first issue. That wasn't a single issue. Many people said, oh, you got to get off that. I'm like, no. That's a major issue, but that leads to bigger things in other areas, and it's just exposed a lot more fraud and corruption. So the whole idea that the Knox County Commission gave their power as elected officials to a bunch of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats was bone-chilling to me.
Well, and I think...
If I were still in Pennsylvania, I could understand it more.
Right.
But not in Tennessee. That shouldn't be happening here.
Well,
so if we don't push back now, we won't get another chance.
Right, and like I mentioned, I think that was the light shining under the rock, because I'm already beginning to see that the bureaucracy, some of the departments in Knox County that I'm already starting to dig into, they're. And I don't want to give too much away, because obviously it's something I'm working on for the blog, but I'm finding that departments are out here having some working group sessions, trying to craft policy for the next 10 years. And when I, as someone that performs a journalistic task, asked to come to it, they're like, well, we really don't want to do that because it's a chilling effect until commission takes action. Well, if we're going to wait until commission takes action, the problem with that is that then there was no transparency whatsoever.
Who works for whom?
Right, exactly. Right. So, I'm glad to see that we have some folks. Here's my thing is, I may not agree with somebody 50% of the time, 60% of the time, but you know what? If somebody is willing to get to know someone and is willing to say, you know what, I might not agree with Christine Cruz or Brian Hornback 50% of the time, but you know what, if they can agree with us 40% of the time or 45% of the time, and they respect the fact that we take stands, then I'm okay with that.
Exactly.
I don't like to find out that anybody can be silenced on anything, because I certainly haven't been silenced in the last 14 or 15 years on my blog. And we don't
exist in a vacuum.
Right.
There are differing opinions, and that's the way we grow, from listening to other people's opinions and trying to figure out how, and a lot of the times it's a communication barrier.
Right.
I think a lot of us on both sides of the aisle really want some of the same basic things in life. We just differ in how we think that the best way to get there is. Well,
and you're right. And even with Democrats, I'm finding that even though with Democrats and liberals, even if we want to go that far, the ones that I don't agree with, if I can have a conversation with you, and if you can tell me your position and I can tell you my position, and if we can walk away from the conversation, then I'm always happy to have those conversations. I don't shy away from any conversation.
Exactly.
And that's what we need to do.
Be civil in that conversation.
Right.
Be peaceful.
Right.
And agree to disagree, and then move on to the next topic.
Right.
I'm not one of these, far right extremists that won't listen to anybody else's point of view.
Right.
But I do believe that there are certain things that can't be compromised. And when someone else is being bullied or attacked, on either side, I'm going to stand up and say, that's not the right thing. We need to go about this in a different way. Right.
Well, I do. I've held you up for about 25 minutes already, so I do want to
Time flies when you're having having fun.
Absolutely. I do want one to say thank you for letting Brian Hornback at brianhornback.com and the Brian Hornback 30 be the one to get your story out, and also to say that as long as brianhornback.com and the podcast, the Brian Hornback 30 exists, you're welcome here anytime. And again, I have no doubt that I'm going to be running into Christine Cruz on a regular basis, and for you and Doc and your three young men that are your children, I'm happy that some of these folks who apparently just like to pick on strong women that have a voice, I'm glad that you're one voice that they're not going to be able to pick on anymore.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian, and I believe that other people's opinion is none of my business, and they're entitled to it. So
right.
I don't lose a minute of sleep over that, and I appreciate your kind words, and we are very blessed, and it takes a, as you know, it's hard work raising a family, and you never stop worrying about your children even when they're adults. So
that's right.
Thank you, and I am very, very grateful for my family, and I continue to wish for the best for them, and I thank you for your kindness and your time. And anytime you want to give me a call, you know my number.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's it. You heard it here. Christine Cruz, no matter what you've read anywhere else, is not going to be a candidate in 2022, but she's not going away. And those folks that like to write stories that get printed with ink, I get. Yep, it's fiction. I guess y'all can move on to something else. So that's it for this edition, the 59th edition of the Brian Hornback 30, and we'll be back later.